Hey everyone, my name is Charlie and today is the beginning of a reading blog. It has been an exceptionally long time since I posted a video in these parts. You can regularly find me over with Charlie on It's a Charlie Thing, our weekly podcast, but in general, I have not been around here that much over, well, the last 20 months at least. I keep starting vlogs this year, recording for a few days and then just not putting them out there, not editing them. There is an audio issue that I still haven't fixed, for I did buy a microphone and then it turned into this whole thing where it wouldn't pair up with my phone. Anyhow, as today is the start of a new week, it is Monday the 10th of August and I am looking to read a book, for I am not currently reading any books. I thought that I would read a book from the Booker Prize Longlist. Hopefully I'll read more than one this week. When the announcement came out, I immediately went onto my library's website and I just searched for every single book that they had, and they had all of them. The only one I didn't order was John of John by Douglas Stewart, because there were so many holds on that one that I probably wouldn't get it until around about February. So I might purchase that one. The book that I am hoping to start today is The Shadow of the Object by Chloe Aridjis. I really liked the sound of this one. It's apparently a little bit absurd, and Charlie described this book as wacky, and she says she thinks that it might be a me book, and personally I am hoping so. It's in the blurb we hear that Flora is visiting Mexico when she is bitten by a family dog, ends up going into hospital for some surgeries, and there is something of the fever dream sort of scenario in which she meets this person who happens to be a puppeteer of sorts. Is it just shadow puppets? No, a magic lantern show. And then something happens that sends Flora off to London and she meets somebody else. Honestly, I'm hoping that the blurb hasn't given away a lot of this story, because it's a rather slim volume. We have 175 pages. If I read quickly enough, I might be able to get this done today, but I make no promises because I keep planning on reading loads, and I'm just very aware that I have more on these days than I used to. I don't have as much reading time as I previously did. I had got myself into the pattern of reading from 10 o'clock every night with Classic FM on, and that's just not been the way for a while now. But hopefully we'll be able to get some reading done this week. I might read this, try and get a couple of the other Booker books that I've got read and discuss them over here. So yeah, today I'm at work. I can't remember whether I mentioned it on here, but I am now the manager of the charity shop. The former manager is now my assistant, which is a very odd thing, and apparently hasn't been done within this charity before, but she no longer wished to work weekends and she wanted to have less responsibility, and we thought that it was a good career move for me. Aside from managing volunteers, consuming copious amounts of coffee and sending the rags off with the ragman, culling stock, getting stock out there, sorting stock, apart from all of the rigmarole that it takes to run a shop, I might take half an hour to read today. I did that last week, but that only worked because of the volunteers that had gone in. I think that the volunteers I have in today, if they saw me reading for half an hour, would be like, why aren't you flaming doing anything? And I hate having to explain about breaks to these people. Anyway, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna drink my coffee, and I might be back tomorrow with some thoughts on The Shadow of the Object. It's Tuesday, and I didn't finish reading The Shadow of the Object yesterday. However, I did get to read at work. It was one of those unfortunate circumstances where the volunteer who would be in the afternoon rang off sick. So I actually did take my half an hour break and I read for that half hour. I said to the other volunteer who was in on the till, I'd had the intention of stopping at 2, reading for half an hour and then getting back to work, but somebody turned up at 2, so I didn't get the chance to start reading until 20 minutes later. As soon as I sat down, the shop filled with people, and I don't just mean like, you know, the very nice quiet customers who are going around and they're just doing this little bit of browsing, and then the loud children. One name kept getting shouted throughout my shop, and I was still like, just let me read. Anyway, I've read 80 pages now and I am enjoying it. This is very much my sort of thing. When Charlie and I were discussing this book last week, she had said she believed that this book was going to be more me, and then she's gone on to read it and agrees with that. She described it as a bit of a fever dream of a novel, and I'm not sure whether I agree with that. I can definitely see this whole aspect of it being stream of consciousness, and there is a bit of the almost delirious quality to the prose in the beginning, given the fact that our main character is getting heavily sedated for this wound that she's got. But I have found myself very much drawn in by the character voice in this one. It has moved rather quickly. We've had a lot of story about these characters. I have enjoyed the voice, and I've enjoyed getting this tale and this almost monologue, and so it has felt very true to the voice. So what I'm asking for might be difficult, but I had hoped for some description of the places we are in, and I just don't know whether that's a thing with modern fiction. Do we not describe the setting as much? I don't know. It's an odd one. I'm not asking for huge, intense details about a hospital. We know what hospitals are like, but just a little bit about the city that the character inhabits. I'd say that's probably my only criticism. I'm enjoying this. I don't quite know where it's going to go. What is referenced about happening to Wilhelmina in the blurb has now happened, and we're reaching the part that doesn't really get discussed much in the blurb. But I do find it odd that 80 pages of the novel is basically encapsulated in that blurb when there are only 178 pages. Anyway, enjoying it, enjoy the atmosphere, enjoy the tale being told. Not really sure what the puppets and all of that and these shadow... She got shown this show on screen, on the wall, that was basically like shadow plays, and I'm not sure what it's got to do with anything yet, but I'm sure that it'll make sense by the end. I've already said I'd like to go back and reread this one because there is so much within the chapters that I think it bears rereading a few times to be able to get everything out of it. And I like a book that bears rereading, so I will hopefully finish this today and then be back tomorrow with something else. Yesterday morning, I finished reading The Shadow of the Object, and yes, I brought it into work specifically to talk about it today. In this book, we have the character of Flora, who's visiting family in Mexico. The family dog jumps up, bites her hand, and she ends up in hospital having several operations, and it is while she is in hospital she meets Wilhelmina. Wilhelmina is this somewhat eccentric elderly woman who is hospitalised with pneumonia but wants to still be outside smoking cigarettes. She's been campaigning to return home to London, where she lives next to the canal with her son. This book is told in 2 parts. The second part sees Flora heading back to London to meet this son, and I don't really know what to say about it. Charlie had told me this book was a bit wacky. I didn't really see the wackiness. All I really saw was this woman wandering about through the hospital, meeting another person, listening to this person monologue about herself for a bit, telling these stories of where she came from in Germany and these shows that she would put on, and then putting one on for the hospital, then getting to see that replicated a bit later on and how she differed with her son, getting to see her and then look at her from the perspective of her son and how they might have differed was interesting, and how the son felt about his mother filling their house with all of these items that would cause puppetry and shows to be put on, and the slides and the projections and all of this. You got to hear how the items were important to the mother before you got to hear from the son and see how his mother's adoration of this sort of stuff and her collection had resonated with him throughout his life. And yes, I would like to reread it and revisit the character, but at the same time, there's just part of me that feels like the book lacks something. I'm not sure what that something is. Yesterday I wondered whether it was description, but then I noted that the character was describing certain scents and things and the way she interacted with the world. She works at this jeweller's where she polishes silver, and they play heavy metal all day long, and they sell a lot of things to heavy metal bands, and so through that you get an idea of who she is. Even this son that she meets, you get to hear about him and his little eccentricities and foibles, and you get the description of the house he's living in and how that looks and the little mouse that he's got and all of that. But I don't know whether the blurb gave away too much, but it was a somewhat predictable book, which, while it tried to be a little bit inventive, didn't really fill me with inspiration. On the back we've got somebody calling it a magnificent sleight of hand reshuffling the novel. We've got Neil Mukherjee calling her a revolutionary, quietly changing the whole novel form. I'm like, where are we changing the novel form here? Is it just because she doesn't do chapter headings and writes in short vignettes? Like, I don't get the plaudits that this book has received from other writers. Yes, it's good writing, but it just feels typical. It feels regular. I don't know where these other writers are finding the extraordinary quality. Perhaps it's because she's not writing about regular people. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't get it. I liked it, but I can live without it. So today I brought Helen of Nowhere to work with me. So far I'm 30 pages in. I wanted to have read more, but ended up conversing with my brother last night instead of reading. On the blurb it says, in the middle of the countryside, a realtor is showing a disgraced professor around an idyllic house. She speaks not only about the home's many wonderful qualities, but about its previous owner, the mystifying Helen, whose presence still seems to suffuse every fixture. Okay, where I am, that doesn't seem to have happened yet, unless I'm completely misunderstanding the person who... Yeah, I'm just hearing from man at the moment. So I haven't got there yet, but we'll see if I find an answer to the question this book asks: what must we give up in exchange for true happiness? Cold hard cash, that's it. Honestly, that's going to be the third book I read from the Booker Prize Longlist, and I'm already wondering, am I just the wrong type of reader for this? Do I need some degree of literary pretension to be able to move forward? I don't know. It has been a few days since last we spoke, mostly because I have been a little bit busy with recording the podcast and arranging my father's funeral. So unfortunately there hasn't been much reading going on Thursday and Friday, which I had hoped to be getting around to. I'm also out of hairspray, so we're dealing with some flat hair at the moment. It's also been quite warm. I cannot stress enough how warm it currently is in this back room. I have closed the doors for the purposes of recording, but there is a nice breeze going through when they're open. So once we're done here, those doors will be open, and hopefully we can get a bit of cool air circulating before undoubtedly the heat returns. On Wednesday, I read Helen of Nowhere, and I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I can't really explain much about it. I don't know that it defies explanation, but it's certainly an absurd, surreal little tale. We begin with a man supposedly being shown around this house in the countryside by a realtor, and then we move from his voice into the voice of the realtor, and then something occurs and the voices don't necessarily blend together, but the way it's written is that it feels like monologues from the man, from the realtor, and then other characters interjecting in certain ways, and their opinions and stories manifesting in ways that didn't seem obvious in the beginning. And I think in terms of this story, it's good that it's incredibly short because you don't have to suspend your disbelief for too long. And it's one of those tales where, in terms of being a little bit weird, a little bit odd, you really have to accept what the author's doing. And if you can accept what the author is doing in terms of the weird unreality of the tale, then I feel like you're going to have a much better time with this one. I think that also it responds well to being read quickly. I don't know that you would be able to put this book down and go back to it. I don't know how that would work, because for me, I found it very propulsive and I had to know what was happening, what was being said. I very much enjoyed the writing of this one. I enjoyed, in terms of craft, the way that it was written, the way that things sounded. And, well, I'm saying sounded. I haven't heard it, but I imagine that the way it sounds, it is quite similar to the way in which people speak, and I always like to see that represented in the books that I'm reading. So I liked that. The only bit that wasn't a detraction, actually, is just the ending. It's, in terms of like the rest of the book, it's odd, it's surreal, and you're left wondering what happened. It's left up to the reader's interpretation, really. But I imagine that when you look at fiction, everything is really the reader's interpretation and what we are going to get from it. So unlike The Shadow of the Object, where I was left feeling like, what was the point? Where is this incredible tale that I was told would be within these pages? In terms of this one, perhaps because I didn't know much about it, I just had the blurb to go off, and it didn't really give much away like The Shadow of the Object did. It felt like the entire story of The Shadow of the Object was in the blurb. It's like a trailer for a film giving away all the best moments. That is how I felt about the blurb on The Shadow of the Object. Yet with Helen of Nowhere, I didn't have that. We were given an idea of what was happening on the blurb, but that wasn't necessarily the case when it came to the reading of the thing. And I think that this is one that I might get myself a copy. I have to see how I'm feeling. I'm going to leave it for a bit because obviously I've only just read it, and so when you first read something, your opinion of it is more strong. So I'm going to leave it for a bit, and if the urge to reread is still there, then I'm going to seek it out again. But it was a very involved experience with this one, and I enjoyed that. Anyway, that's me. I have finally, this year, managed to make it to the end of a vlog. I read 2 books. Hopefully I can get some more read this week, though it is a bit busier because I always seem to come back around these parts when I have overtime. Anyway, if you've read any of the books that I talked about and would like to share your thoughts, please feel free to do so in the comments. Have you read any of the Booker books? What are your thoughts on those books? Are there any that you would recommend that I prioritise over others? Do let me know. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, because until next time, that is all.